this Sunday morning. Is it Sunday? It's Saturday. I ended up at Lucky Voice last night, so that's why I don't know what day it is.
Feels like Sunday to you. You've lived 2 days.
Been here since Wednesday
in Lucky Voice.
Yeah, in Lucky Voice, just doing karaoke. So I'm so happy we have the amazing Laura Maybury here. Some of you might know her as the lead singer, lyricist, songwriter, percussionist for the Scottish rock band Churches, and others might know her as a brilliant solo artist who's just started releasing some singles, all of which are fantastic. So yeah, we're going to kind of do a bit of a touch on her career so far. So I kind of figured, should we start at the beginning? So you're kind of like launching into a new phase of your career at the moment. But you started playing in bands when you were around 15 in Scotland. So what was it that kind of first made you fall in love with music? Do you remember like any pivotal songs that you listened to or artists that made you think, wow, I want to do this?
I think I just grew up in a very musical household insofar as we were always listening to the radio, we were listening to records, and my dad would always have like vinyl, and he would be like, you can choose one vinyl, and you get to put it on, and we were choosing like ABBA or like things like that, and then really being into CD inlays in the early 90s, being very into analysing them, and it was like music first as like a fan before anything else, I think.
And were you kind of going around to gigs as well when you were younger and like seeing the live shows?
I lived in a pretty rural space, so if you did go to a show, it was like a specific pilgrimage to go to drive to see a certain thing at like the SECC in Glasgow. And when I was a teenager, then I would get a bus and a train, 2 buses and a train to go to Glasgow to see certain things. It's kind of a happy accident, all this, I think.
And kind of getting into the band scene, like what was that like? Because 15 is pretty young to start playing in bands, but did you find it kind of felt quite...
I felt old. I think I was behind. Like every other kid that I knew in the town was already in a band, and I was working as a kitchen porter, dishwasher in a fish restaurant, and all the other guys that worked there were already in a band. And then somebody at their high school, their band broke up. It was a big deal. Igneous broke up, and it was the talk of the KP wash-up section, and they were like, Jamie Scott needs a drummer, and I was like, could be me. And so I added him on MSN, and then we chatted about it on MSN, which ages me very much in this moment.
Yeah. So he stepped up.
Yeah.
And then you were playing around a bunch of different bands, and then you met the guys that became your bandmates. So they asked you to sing because, was it Ian was like producing your
because
band?
Ian, like they're both Ian and Martin are great producers, but Ian had produced the EP of my band at the time, and they've been writing songs to hopefully, I don't even know, Campbell would know, but I think they were hoping to like get signed as writers, and they were like, well, maybe she could sing it for the pitch, and then we were like, oh, we just make a band. Which is like nice as part of the story that went well. Could have been a terrible idea.
And then I think you kind of had this like DIY ethos from the beginning, and you got snapped up by a record label pretty quickly. But I think what's impressive about Churches is that you always seem to manage to maintain quite a strong level of creative control. You put out your debut single Lies, which blew up. So you talk a bit about like the initial reaction to that, and sort of like, so also I should have mentioned that Lauren has a very good documentary out, like a short on BBC, where she kind of speaks about early career stuff.
BBC, boo.
Yeah. And so I mean, Lies reaction, kind of, were you expecting things to escalate that quickly, or was it total shock? What the fuck is happening?
I mean, we were very lucky that very early on we were able to work with people who were wiser than us. We had like a manager who was very cautious and careful and thoughtful, and then we found PR and agents and people that were very like mindful of us. We didn't know what we were doing. We had no idea. But that I don't know. That's a very specific moment in time that I don't think you can ever do again. Like whenever people ask me, how would you get your band? I'm like, it was like 2012. It was Hype Machine. It was SoundCloud. It was a very specific time, and we were just very lucky that it caught the way that it caught. But I remember all of us, like, Martin was touring with a band called Twilight Sad at the time, and like he was away doing that, and then Ian and I were doing our other jobs, and this was just happening on the internet, and we're like, oh, shit.
And by this point you hadn't actually done a live show?
No, so we really, we stacked the odds against ourselves to a degree, but very privileged and lucky to have that. By the time we were playing shows, people gave enough of a shit to go see them. So, yeah.
But obviously, like, your live shows have become like a huge part of churches. I think you're very known for your amazing stage persona. You're very captivating to watch on stage. Always love the kind of like charging around, spinning. It's great. So, like, did that come naturally to you, or do you feel like kind of you dealt with nerves, or did you just kind of plunge into it?
It doesn't feel natural. Well, not, maybe more so now, but yeah, I think anybody that saw us on the first album was like, oh yeah, that band, and that girl stands really still and looks really upset. And I was upset, and I was very still. But yeah, after that, it seemed pertinent to do a better job at it and like consciously trying to evolve that. And at least now I think it is like a different part of my brain that I can engage. It doesn't feel hugely natural to do it necessarily, but it's better, I think.
And in the documentary, you sort of talk about how those early kind of years of the band, everything is kind of like a blur, and it's only when you look at photographs of yourself performing at Glastonbury or on Jules Holland or touring in America that you kind of remember like, oh yeah, I did that. But are there any moments where you feel like they do stand out, like any kind of pivotal moments of the band where you're like, you know, this is amazing, kind of collaborations, possibly Robert Smith? That was a pretty big one.
Thank you. Leading question. No, I mean, we've been really lucky with all the things, and like now it's been 10 years since the first album, so we got to go back and dig out a lot of the archive things about that. And yeah, it feels like watching another person, somebody I know and I'm fond of, doing a thing rather than. But I think it's because it was so mad and we were so busy and like just in it the whole time. But yes, many cool things have happened. Most notably, Robert Smith emailing us in all caps, which he does do.
Yes, I've experienced that as well.
Yes.
Answered some glass.
Hello, Roisin, what do you want?
At 2 a.m, which is like full peak off. So yeah, that was a moment.
Yes, he does. Generally, he is awake all night, is what I've learned.
Hanging upside down.
But it's very on brand. Like he's faking it. He's not.
No, I've seen him. Have you seen him obviously perform like a bunch of times? I'm assuming.
Yes, been very lucky to, and even like he was very kind and played a couple of shows with us, and there's nothing more bizarre to me than hearing Robert Smith in my fucking in-ears. Very weird. Like, oh yeah, he sounds like the record. Like he is that good. He hasn't changed any of the keys. He's still, his voice is just absolutely perfect. And then I'm like, what vocal things is he doing? He must be taking great care of his voice. He's not. He's drinking Guinness and absolutely getting that way. And it just, he's the one. He's the one.
I guess, so it's kind of interesting that you studied journalism briefly. So
Yes.
do you feel like, we were speaking about kind of some of the pitfalls of the industry, and I think for a lot of artists, I imagine one of the biggest frustrations is being asked the same questions again and again and again. And specifically to you, I think you spoke about misogyny once in 2014. And since then, you know, I think the majority of the headlines of the interviews you do tend to revolve around that, which is obviously not necessarily a bad thing. It's obviously great to speak about this because it's still an issue in the industry, but you're obviously so much more than that as an artist. So I guess, you know, like, do you feel like you kind of managed to tackle that a bit in the documentary, sort of about, you know, how it's affected you, but also kind of your status as an artist, as a creator, and I guess, you know, showing people kind of like all of the facets, because this is something also that you dealt with from critics as well, people underestimating you, saying, you know, you were the singer, and not having any other role in the band, which is obviously very untrue.
I mean, I don't know. Everybody's got a job to do. It depends on the day, if you ask me. Some days I get up and I'm like, oh man, the most interesting thing about me is what other people think about me, and that's all they'll ever talk about, and that's a bummer sometimes. But you know, it's just, I get it. Like, it's more interesting as a headline to talk about those things than, or maybe releases BBC documentary. People, nobody's gonna click on that, but they click on the scandalizing headline of details a decade of death, and then it was like, oh, like, and I get it. It was like, we've all got jobs to do, but it is, yeah. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it's quite bizarre because you're a concept, but that's just part of the job. I think I'm like, that's the part of promo is like, for better or worse, you are a concept. You're a kind of, yeah. But there's also a person that lives in the back of my brain who I'm like, oh, that's not very nice. But yeah, it's just part of the thing, I think. But yes, sometimes I'm like, wow, Wouldn't it be magical to talk about tunes? That would be fabulous. But I don't think anybody gets to talk about tunes, really. I don't really know in this moment in time if anybody actually gets to talk about music, because that's not how the cycle works. So.
Well, speaking of tunes, you have released three solo singles under your own name in the last, 6 months? So should we start on that debut, which was Are You Awake? Which I felt like was a very dramatic kind of change in tone and everything. I think it felt like a very concerted effort to sound not like Churches, because this is your music. It's clearly very personal, like the lyrics on that are very intimate, they feel very raw. So when did you start writing what would become like your solo work? Were you kind of thinking about it for a while, or, was this in the works for a bit?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, for a long time I definitely was like, I'm not doing anything, I'm not doing it. And whenever people would ask me, I'd be like, no, I would never. And then I look back on that and I think that was overcompensating because I didn't want to piss anybody off, to be honest. But yeah, there was like a year or so where I was like, well, maybe. And it's all just like, I hope nobody ever finds this fucking lyric book, because if they do find it, they're like, what a weird, sad woman. Because I just write down lyric ideas as I think of them, and then some of them will work for the band and some of them don't, and then the pile of ones that just don't work for the band kind of got to a point. And that song only had one lyric for it. It was like, the hometown hero is a poison chalice thing, and I was like, she got some baggage in there that she needs to unpack somewhere else that doesn't necessarily work in the Churches universe, but could work somewhere else.
And is that, sorry if I'm really kind of too much into things, but like kind of referencing the pressures of, coming home, or like expectations of, or feeling the weight of representing a place, possibly?
Yeah, I think I'm very lucky that I've still got friends and family that are in Glasgow, and that's the place I feel most comfortable, and in a good way, nobody gives a fuck about the band. But it is like, you can never go home again. It is kind of true to a point. Like it just is different, and I think we've been so lucky with everything we've had, but it does change things. And I'm sure that we act differently, but the first thing that I noticed was that people talk to you differently and act differently around you, and it's quite lonely, guys. It's a bit lonely. And then I think it was a rainy day, and I was like, no, gotta get that out. So.
And it made for a great song, and then you kind of chose to do it with a very sparse piano, which is really, really beautiful. And is that you? Do you play? Or you kind of compose?
Well, anybody who saw the show last night, apparently I fucking don't. But in theory, yes, I play piano, but not well.
Are you playing and singing at the same time?
Well, to be fair, it was the pedal escaped from me, and it went away. It just left. And my hands are a little small. I can't hold an octave at the same time. I can't pretend to be a sustain pedal, so it wasn't that great. But yes, technically, like piano was my first instrument, and then drums, and then singing.
So. Cool. And then on to Shame, which was also released last year. Different sound. This kind of reminded me like sort of St. Vincent T. Mass Seduction kind of vibe. Yeah, it's great, kind of more synthy. And someone told you a while ago, I think, that they reminded you of Joan of Arc. Maybe Boudica. I don't know, for me, like the Celtic thing, but I get that vibe in this. You sound very sort of, it's very Don't Mess With Me. But yeah. So can you talk a bit about the lyrics on that, kind of what you were feeling at the time? Because I think for me it's like an either or situation if you're not quite sure who's in the power seat, I guess.
That's life. I think I had the idea for the tagline. It was like a song called Shame, but the tagline would be like, oh, what a shame. Like a kind of tongue-in-cheek take on that. And yeah, I don't know. I think I carry a lot of guilt and shame in my existence, and especially as a woman in predominantly a male space, I think there's a lot of weird shit baked into that existence, and for better or worse, unfortunately, I am a straight woman, so I do date men, and I'm like, oh. It's just weird to get to an age where you realise all the things that are a little bit disturbed about how you interact with men, and then be like, well, off I go. Like, so yes, it's just part of the psyche, kind of, maybe.
And I feel like, interesting now, I was listening back to He Said, She Said, and feeling like there are some themes there that I think feel like they're kind of coming into this work that you're sort of re-exploring. There's some stuff on power dynamics in there, but also we'll get into like the next single, but transformation and performance, I think, as well. And it's really interesting to hear an artist exploring the nature of performance, but also as a woman in a song, I think. And I feel like that's sort of something that a lot of artists have been tackling in various, very interesting ways. But I think for you kind of going into the solo sphere as well, like for fans, it's probably very fascinating to kind of hear that perspective, and it's just all you as well. So onto the transformation thing, so shapes, it's just shapes.
Change Shapes.
Change Shapes, which is the new, very, very excellent single. So that was kind of touching on themes of transformation, and there's like, you were talking to a friend about Greek mythology a little bit. Was that a thing?
Well, yeah, when we were on the phone, Rasheen
Yes.
thought I was smart and I read Greek mythology, and I was like, no, that's you, you've done that. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
But I like that you were like, you must be writing about this specific, and I'm like, no, I think I was just being self-absorbed.
Well, I think also like Greek myths, like I think, tend to reflect human experience. So I think probably reading into that, it's kind of like they still feel pertinent to now. And I think again, like sort of, it's interesting both in your personal and public sphere as an artist who, as a woman, I think constantly demanded to keep changing, keep shifting, keep evolving, whether it's like look or sound or style or all three. Have you felt like that pressure in your career over the years?
I mean, I think there is an expectation, or just based on fact. Female artists do have to evolve and be exciting and be interesting and change in a way that, unless you're David Bowie, as a male artist, you tend to not necessarily. But there is pressure. And even yesterday, I was talking to my friend about like the baseline cost of being a woman in an indie band is much higher than being a dude in an indie band, because it's just not free. Like, yeah, just the expectation of it. And you could choose to not do it, but it's almost like a self-preservation thing. Like, technically, tomorrow I could stop putting on makeup and stop wearing outfits, but the cost of that, of how people would approach that, and the awful shit that you receive because of that, you keep spending money on it, and then it's it's never going to end. It's going to be like death becomes her. Like churches in 20 years, it's going to be
The other way around.
my head's but I'm still there, I think.
Yeah, and I guess like the perception would be that you're not trying, whereas I guess we've seen.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. You can never, yes, they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. You have to do all the exercising, do all the upkeep, but don't tell anybody you do it, because it has to seem natural, because that's part of the trap that we trap women with, I guess. I don't know.
And again, going back to like he said, she said, I think you've got that line, what is it? Keep an eye on your waistline.
Yeah.
Yes.
Disordered eating, it's a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But yeah, Change Shapes, how's the reaction been to the solo material so far? Is it what you expected? Was it what you were hoping for?
I mean, I feel really grateful that people are giving it a chance, to be honest. I think it's very hard to get people to re-see you. It's like you've been in a relationship for 10 or 11 years and you're trying to re-see your partner as a different thing. And I think, people have been very generous about giving me the space to try to do that. So I hope the two things can coexist. I hope. But yeah, so definitely a lot more Ibis hotels in the solo era than there is in the church era. I tell you, Ian and Martin are not getting in the fucking Ibis. They're not doing it.
And just talking the band as well, like it's obviously, it's just the thing of, I guess, politics of taking a break and reassuring fans, no, this is not like an over thing. It's just doing something different for now, because this is what means the most for you in this moment.
Yes, I do realise the irony that the last Churches single was called Over, and the lyrics were "Wake me up when it's over," and then we didn't do anything after that. I was like, that looks a little pointed in hindsight, but it wasn't on purpose. But no, we've signed on for 2 more records, so we just need to.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, we need to make them though, so don't. We need to figure out how and when to do that, but we are going to do it. The group text flickers. It flickers. It's there. So yeah.
And then plans for the solo stuff. Is there an album on the way? Are you going to do an EP? No pressure?
There is a record. It's been more of a laborious birth than I thought it would be, just in terms of like industry shit, guys. Industry shit. But yeah, well, it's close. It's yeah. So I don't have a final date, but I think Q3, if I'm getting the Qs right.
Autumn.
Yes. I think autumn. I hope autumn. If not, I'm just gonna roll me into the street. I'm done. I can't do anymore.
And what about summer? Have you got more festivals lined up? You obviously performed last night. Aside from the keyboard lunging for the pedal, went well. I heard.
Yes. Other than that, the one song where I played an instrument and I was like, this doesn't look good for you. But no, other than that, it was good. But yes, I think there's maybe one other festival later in the summer, and then gotta finish the fucking record regime, don't I? I've got to. I have to. I must.
Yeah. And any particular sounds, artists that you're kind of feeling like you're influenced by, or is it more thematic that you're kind of like working to your songwriting?
I think it was more kind of about how you approach the songs. Like in churches, we always start with instrumentation and production first for the most part, and then the lyrics and the stories kind of come afterwards, which is never a way I've written before. And it's a really kind of interesting puzzle for the brain. And when we nail it, I think we nail it. But sometimes I'm like, oh, I've not written correctly for the tapestry that they made, sort of. And I think, you know, sometimes I'm like, this is a great lyric, and I just and I try and squish it into them. I'm like, no, it doesn't work here. So it was fun for me to do something that was more like lyrics first, word first, narrative first, and rather than coming in and like ruining a thing that they've made that is actually good. And I'm like, no, but this song must be about this because the Notebook says so. I think, yeah, it's just nice to use your brain a bit differently, I think.
And it's kind of like an interesting time for bands at the moment, because obviously, like you were saying, very different landscape when you came in, and you get asked still, I imagine, you know, how do I make it in a band? Like, how do I get in a band? How do I get a record deal? They're very, very different. But it seems like there's a very good flurry of very exciting new bands coming around. And like, you know, is that like, I don't know, are there any, I guess, like, just to ask the obvious question, are there any that you're really keen on at the moment? Have you seen any, managed to catch any here that you're into? Any new music that you're excited about? Just for the Festival of New Music, I feel like I should probably ask this question.
We should. It is the, I mean, I don't know, I feel like, especially as somebody that spends a lot of time in America, I feel like Britain does bands better, I think. And I don't know what, I don't know why.
Safe to say that.
I don't know why it is. It feels like, I don't know if it's like we've all become obsessed with being the main character of our existence, like solo artists and front people focus. It seems like that's kind of the trend to a degree, but I don't know. I think in terms of like, yeah, Britain just does bands better. I don't know what it is. Is it because we're all inside and it's rainy and we're sad? I don't know, but it feels there's
nothing else to do.
A little bit. I don't know. Whenever anybody's like, what's the vibe in LA? What's the sound? What? I'm like, I don't fucking know. I don't think there isn't a. I don't feel like there's a scene or a consciousness in that same way. So, yeah, well done, The Great Escape, for British bands.
It's going very well. And I guess, just going back to the documentary, so were you approached to do that by the BBC?
Yes, they had asked about making a 15-minute short. We didn't know at the time, so it was part of a campaign that Six Music are doing around mental health, but it wasn't meant to be that necessarily, but it became part of that. And yeah, awkward when people. Well, I don't know. I think that's my blessing and my curse is that people are like, we want to make a thing about you. I'm like, oh, why? But yes, it's been really nice to see the response to it, and I don't know. So much of media stuff, not you, #not you, but is quite scary though, because every interview you do, people want you to be really vulnerable and they want you to share things and they want you to hand your feelings to them on a platter, and then most of the time afterwards I'm like, did I say that? I don't think I said it like that, oh god. So after doing that for like 11 years, I have trust issues, Roisin. I have trust in it. So at least, and I think, yeah, at this moment in time, I'm like, the thing I like most is live radio interviews. Where nothing you say can be taken out of context, nothing can be, and they'll always take the bits that are
there's no paraphrasing, was there?
A bit, yeah. And I think I was quite worried about that with the BBC thing. I was like, oh god, what if it's 15 minutes of tiny violin something, because I think that's how it feels like people talk about me a lot. They're like, oh, she's so whingy and feeling so bad for herself. It's like,
So I think you come off as very resolute, and I think it's really interesting. I like the touching on, because I didn't know this about you, the sort of like Riot Girl fanzine thing you were doing, which was very, very cool. And I feel like there's a bit of, again, there's like a resurgence. Like in my hometown, we now have like a Riot Girl night, and they throw on like feminist sort of punk bands and rock bands and stuff, and it's brilliant. We had Hot Wax down there a little while ago, phenomenal band if you don't know them. And yeah, I don't know, I guess like the sort of resurgence of movement, and it's, I don't know, timing's just funny, isn't it, when that thing comes up. But you know, kind of how did you kind of become involved in that scene? Like, was it just like local because you were producing your own zine? Is that a thing?
yeah, it was like very off the era. It was like 2011, and my friends worked in a venue, and they were talking about, we should put on a night where this happens and this happens, and I was telling them all the things they should do, and then I was like, oh, maybe I should do it. But it was just like, at first it was just live shows, and we wanted to book predominantly like female, non-binary queer artists, because every time I would be on a bill at that time, I was the only girl, and then everyone was like, oh, good for you. And it doesn't feel good for you, it feels fucking lonely and weird. So yeah, to me, I'd always wanted to have that kind of community. So yeah, I think it was like one Saturday a month we do that, and then we had like a radio show and a zine and a podcast and stuff. So yes, it was a lot of computer work when I was on tour, to be honest. The first two Churches albums, I was like, I shouldn't be on spreadsheets this much. But I do think it was helpful for my spirit to have that to do, because everything else was quite mental, and it felt great to have a text group with 4 other lassies, and we got to sort out our show. Doesn't matter, all this stuff. We've got to get it done. We've got to get the guarantees sorted. So yeah.
Yeah. And I guess the BBC documentary does touch on the amount of shit you got dealt at a very young age. Like the abuse after Lies. I was kind of shocked that it started that early. When you burst into the scene. So like, kind of looking back on that, does it feel like, you know, in context or something, like the overwhelmingness? I'm just kind of trying to, like, I think watching the documentary, trying to fathom how you kind of managed to deal with that. So,
mental, it's definitely mental. I don't know, yeah, I don't know, it's not good for your brain, that stuff, I don't think. And I'm desensitized to certain things to a degree, but I'm much more like highly sensitive about things. Anybody who works with me knows, I'm like, sometimes I go from 0 to 100 panic, like pretty quickly on certain topics, and I'm like, oh, that's not rational, and I'm like, oh, it's the stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky to have had people that we work with who were very thoughtful and generous and took as much care as they could of that. But I mean, none of us knew. Nobody knew. Like, it was like so early in like social media, the internet. Like, everybody was like, yeah, bands, be online. And we didn't think about it that much afterwards. And it is interesting, like I have a lot of friends who are in bands and similar ages as me, and they get similar, worse, less, depending, but I don't know, it was something very specific. Like, I was talking with my friend Michelle, who's in Japanese Breakfast, and obviously she gets a very specific type of commentary because she's Asian and she's female, but she did say that she was like, back in the day I didn't get that. And we were like having wine and chatting about it, and we were like, she was like, there's something specific about you that really fucking bothered a certain kind of man at a certain kind of time, and then it just stuck.
Yeah, it just genuinely seemed to make them crazy. It was just vicious.
But it is interesting, when I release the memoir, guys, I will talk about the amount of...
I'm ghostwriting.
like, it's very, there's a specific, have very specific experiences with older men who are in bands, many bands that we all know, who would come to shows or slip in the DMs and be a bit gross. And I'm like, it's very, I think there's something, I'm like, is it the 90s aesthetic, kind of? I think there's something about it that's like, it's weirdly honey trappy to a certain kind of dude. Yeah, but when I have no fucks to give, I'll tell you all the names, guys. But it's quite weird, it's weird, it's very odd. It's an odd thing and I don't know what it is.
I think in the documentary,
it's just annoying.
Like it's something that like there will never be an answer for like why people really behave like that. I think, and why they think it's necessary to, as you say, slide into someone's DMs, because no one really wants that. We've established.
Cat memes. Put cat memes in the DMs.
These are always welcome.
But it's about, and because I was so young, I think I was like 24, 25, and like guys that we admired so much were coming down to the shows and we're like, that's so amazing that they love the band. They're going to bring their teenage daughters. And then afterwards I'm like, in the DMs. I'm like, oh no, that was a nice experience, and now it's weird. Everything has to be a bit weird. It's my experience.
I think what is really good is that you mentioned earlier that you did have a good support network around you, which I don't think is the experience for every artist. And I think, especially also the fact that this was 2013, 2014, I feel like we like to think we're much more conscious of mental health and artist welfare these days, but I don't know if necessarily people always follow through with that. So it is really nice to hear you say like you had that support at least in the Maelstrom, I guess. So yeah, we have 15 minutes left, so I'm gonna just put to you, is there anything about like your career so far that you feel like highlights things that you think you would have liked to have done differently going forward, what to expect over the next year? I'm throwing like 3 big questions at you in the space of 10 seconds, so should we start with I guess just like highlights so far as an artist, like big moments that you do remember, don't need the photograph to remind yourself that it happened.
I mean, I've been incredibly lucky, like to still be like able to sit and chat shit and play shows like this far into it. Like bands don't last that long for the most part, so we've been very lucky, and that's because, technically Unlike Church has never had a big single. We've never been a big singles band, and that's
lots and lots of bangers.
Thanks. Low-key bangers. That's our recipe. But no, it's because people invested in the band and they invested in the community and the experience of the band. That's how, if we release a decent record, if we release a shit record, like there's a consistency to that that's really not our doing necessarily, So we've been very lucky with that. And
I would say also like your live shows, like you've always been a consistently excellent live band. And I think the fact that you put in that work and you did seem to be consistently on tour. Like I kind of just remember all through like the sort of late 2010s, mid 2010s, and it felt like you were kind of constantly doing shows and stuff in a good way.
So it was constantly. You're not incorrect.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that was exhausting at times, but I think
I was young then. I didn't mind.
You had the energy. We don't anymore in our 30s. It's terrible. Honestly, like everything hurts today.
It's the lucky voice. You can't.
Yeah.
This is what happens, guys. Don't go.
Don't accept the invitation. It will only end in tears.
I think that was people like that was our manager. To be fair, he was the one that was like, you need to take this out of the internet and make it a real life thing for people. And we just got to grind it out. Let's book the Horseshoe of America and just do it. And that was what made the difference, I think, because we were so on the internet and kind of intangible. But that's what I think made it land with people in that way, was doing that. And that's a very like old school grind it out tour thing. But it's what made the band exist in a way. So.
And again, like unusual for a UK band, you did very well in America. You still do very well in America.
Yeah, they like us. I don't know why. No, not that I don't know why, but yeah. They call Ian Lane constantly, and it drives them to fucking distraction.
Lane.
Yes, because they don't have the
extra
they don't. So they're always like, "Oh, here, what's your just Lane?" And it makes them really, really sad.
But aside from that, touring in America, fun. Do you remember the first one?
The first one, I remember the first bus tour. It was the only Churches tour. So, like most tour buses, just all bunks. But some of the fancy ones, they have like a diva lounge at the back. And we did one tour with the diva lounge where they were like, "Girl in band, you go in bed out the back." And it was just very weird and it made everybody very angry. And we never did that again. And also that was weird because the bed was like side on, so when you would break, I'd like twat my head off a table. And it felt like I was being punished for having a nicer room than everybody else.
This is what happens when you demand.
And I remember like beseeching and be like, "Please never again, don't put me in there because it makes them so upset. I just want to be part of it, I want to be one of us." But yes, other than that, I'm like, I look back on things we got to do, I'm like, that was ridiculous. Like we got to do so many fucking cool things.
Got Jules Holland doing his backwards walk, introducing you.
But yeah, like that was mad. And then like we did all that on the first record when we were really worried, really overwhelmed, and a little nauseous. So yeah, it's nice now to be like, yesterday somebody said to me, they were like, "It's kind of like you're a mature student." It's like, yes it is. I get to go
doing your masters.
And they were really annoying when you were like 18. You're like, God, they take it so seriously. They're so earnest with their love of going to the library and learning stuff. But I'm like, I do feel like I'm like weepy-eyed most of the time. I'm like, oh, it's so nice, guys. We're on the Great Escape, so nice. So yeah, I am, I guess, the annoying mature student in the class.
I think it's great, and I'm very excited about the new music to come. I reckon we just have like time for questions if anyone wants to ask anything.
9 minutes and 34 seconds.
Go.
Ugh. It's awkward now.
We just talk to everyone out.
I'll ask you a question. What did you sing at Lucky Voice?
I did not sing. I don't do singing because I can't. So
That's the point.
no. No, it's actually, this is why I don't do karaoke, because the only thing I can do is rapping, and no one wants to hear that.
Interesting.
It tends to,
This is how Roisin gets cancelled.
yeah, no, this is the thing. That's why I don't do karaoke, because I can't sing. No one wants to hear that, and
But you
no
wouldn't
one
have had a
wants
nice
to hear
time.
rapping either. Yeah, no. So I watch and enjoy, my friend Ash doing Whitney Houston,
What one?
Dance with Somebody.
Good.
Obviously, yeah. And a lot of people doing Toxic last night by Britney Spears.
Oh.
We sort of opened a door and just this wall of sound kind of came at us. It's interesting.
I once accidentally put Toxic on a jukebox in a bar on a night off on tour 7 times because I didn't think it was taking it, and then I was like, "That's not worked. It's not worked." And it was funny for the first few times. It wasn't funny after that. Nothing will piss off a band of dudes more than you playing Toxic 7 times when they're trying to have a night off. They're just trying
Maybe even once, but I would have enjoyed it 7 times, I think.
Yeah.
I once had to, for a job, I got asked to do a feature on Africa by Toto and had to listen to that song on a loop for about
That
50
sounds
times.
like a pleasure.
No, I think at one point an editor came over and said, "Are you okay?" And I just I think I had sweat running down my head, just make it stop. I think that is like a form of psychological torture. Sort of next, Clockwork Orange sequel, that's how they'll punish them.
The Weezer version, maybe.
Yes.
The original, I have no slander on that, I'm afraid.
Just listen to it 50 times in a row and tell me how you feel after that. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can just
right
keep,
back to London. It's
we
just-
can just end up nattering for another 7 minutes and 32 seconds.
Yes. We'll hold it open in case anybody has any questions for 10 seconds. And then if not, I'll ask Roisin more questions about karaoke that she
Yeah,
has.
we'll flip this because tables should turn every now and again.
I'll say something.
Go.
Hi, I've got a bit of a gruff voice. I've just realised after
See, you at Lucky Voice as well.
I always have a voice.
We're all like lower octave than we
Absolutely.
normally are, I think.
I had a bit of a weird experience, not really questions, more of a bit of feedback on last night. So I was at the Faye Webster gig down at the Dome. It was a very young crowd, shall I say, and I think a lot of their fan base were probably under 15 and probably found an artist on social media. And it was a very new to me as sort of like a middle-aged man, I guess, of the feeling in the room was very hysterical. And they've been hysterical in different places where you normally, like a guitar solo, you would expect hysteria to break out. And I lasted about half an hour. I had to leave, which is a bit odd. And then I headed off down the beach to find another gig, and I came across your gig. And so thank you very much for that. It was very much enjoyed. So I guess my question is, if artists are breaking out on like social media, which wasn't available as to such a degree when you were coming through, what other avenues can we now pursue for fans to find people, do you feel? Or where's the new platform going to be? Does that make sense?
I mean, if I knew that, they'd have to pay me a lot more money.
Exactly.
It's... I don't know, but I do think, it is obviously very different, like the way that churches came up on social media is so different than how it works now.
Today, yeah.
And I do think that changes. I feel like it changes, even like when we record to record, what are the asks from the labels are so different because shit's changing and moving all the time. But I don't know, I think that's actually a very positive thing about it, that you can, yes, okay, we're still beholden to third-party apps and whatever, but to me I kind of try to view that stuff as like, it's an extension of like a street team or a message board, like view it as that, and it's kind of the only place where you get to have a direct line to people that doesn't have to go through a conduit or get edited, or so yeah, it is a laborious, time-consuming thing, but if you can use it, I don't know. If somebody once was like, David Bowie wouldn't be using TikTok, I'm like, I fucking think he probably would.
That guy
He'd use it in a really interesting, creative, cool way. Like if you can have that be part of the arsenal of how you try to get the message out, then I think that's positive. But again, I'm like, we're just middle-aged, man. We don't get it.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, the boat sailed there.
Hysteria. I've seen Hysteria on a guitar solo. I saw Van Halen.
Yeah.
I saw a grown man cry at Van Halen show in Des Moines, Iowa. So I don't know.
Brilliant. And thank you for coming as well. I like on certain of artists for repping this festival today, and not bailing out with stupid politics. So cheers for that.
Technically, my publicist on the back, so I'm.
Were there any other questions? Yo.
I'll just shout. How do you feel that your approach to lyric writing has changed over the years, if it has?
Thank you. That's a very thoughtful question. As if I am thoughtful. I think that when I first started writing lyrics for churches, I knew that there was kind of a concept-ish. Like I'd never played in a band like that. I'd never written for a band like that. So it felt, and there was like a few songs that existed before I joined the band, so kind of like there was a palette already of what the lyrics should be. So I feel like there was a few records of me trying to write in that space half of the time, and then the other half was more like personal point of view stuff. And I don't know, I think when I think about like tunes that are on the radio, what is what I listen to, I'm like, it can be the best song ever, and if it's got a clunky lyric, it makes me really upset. So I think I've learned that I'm like a words, stories, panic person first. So I just let that happen more, is my hope. I don't know.
Anyone else? Over there?
So I saw you yesterday, great set, saw the piano issue, but it was so good.
It's gonna haunt me forever, honestly. That's, yeah, all the good things can happen, and you will think about the 3 minutes while you were chasing the pedal under the thing, but it's fine. It's fine.
Going to the tunes, as you said, wanting to ask about that last song that you played, because I felt like that really stood out as kind of a different approach to your music. It felt like a lot more punky, a lot more kind of rocky, and just kind of wondered, obviously with the different tracks that you've got at the minute, is it going to go more that way? Is that just, yeah, just a bit more?
Yeah, I guess the last song on the set is kind of a more loud, angry, shouty one. And it was just kind of by accident. Like we were in the studio doing a thing, and then we did that in like half an hour as like a kind of throwaway thing that we thought would just be fun, and didn't think it would end up on the record. But that's kind of the one that we're like, it has to be on the record. And literally the other day went and recorded the bass line again, because we're like, it has to be ratchet and like it has to be a bit mad. And yeah, I think that's the kind of thing that I hope to get out of this. I'm like, something like that would never exist in a church's universe, and I think that's what's been nice about this moment. I'm like, you can have the sad piano song with the pedal that runs away, but you can also have the kind of more, it's just, that's like a guitar band song, and we don't have that in churches. So it's been nice to do different things.
Thanks for the question so far.
1 minute and 10 seconds.
You get to ask me something if you want. I feel like I've been grilling you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god. Former journalist, so.
I mean, I was crap. I was crap, guys. Like, I was it's very nice that the narrative, everyone's like, well, you used to be a journalist. I'm like, yeah, I was 22, and I wrote about records for free. That doesn't count. That's not a thing. But what are you going to see today? What bands are you excited about at the New Music
The
Festival?
worst question you could have asked me, because I haven't looked at the schedule yet. I know there's a bunch of great stuff I still want to see. There's a guy called Ulysses Wells playing with a mutual friend on drums tonight.
Woody?
Yes, so I said I'll go along to that. I think the thing I love about Greatscape though is that you can just wander around anywhere and sort of fall into a venue, or you can be sitting outside having a drink and sounds of a band kind of floating down from 2 doors down or something, and you just think, oh, that sounds good, and then wander in. So there's a Welsh band called Melt, That happened yesterday, and I was really enjoying listening to them like from outside for a moment, and then sort of like stuck my head in the door. And they were really good. I really enjoyed that one. And we had a stage yesterday, which was fab. And we had Gia Ford, who I adore, and she's just very exciting right now, and keeps releasing excellent song after excellent song. Another really good songwriter, I think very lyrics focused. And we had Wings of Desire, great rock band. Oh my god, it's minus 15.
Too many wrecks, too much taste making machines. Stop. Making
Anyway,
so much taste.
well, we're about. Thank you so much. It's been really, really great talking to you, and congrats on the solo stuff because it's fantastic, and I think everyone's looking forward to hearing more. And thanks everyone for coming.
Yes,
And
thank
thanks
you
for being
for
such a
bringing
great
your
audience.
hangovers to this room. We appreciate it.